Let's begin our session today by loading up the Basis Launch Doc. Basis Launch Doc is a BBJ program that shows off some of the newer functionality that we've added to the product over the last few years. But one of the great features that it also shows off is some demonstration of some valuable product. And the one we're going to look at today, if we go to Interpreter, we're going to go and run the Jasper report. So that can either be SQL or store procedure powered reports, utilizing the Jasper or iReport designer to create these reports. The one we're specifically interested in today is the add-on invoice report. So let's have a look at what this report can do. Very excitingly, this report did not require us to have either a data dictionary or our data in a normalized format. So it's not as if we went into a customer master file and simply did a select star from customer master or selected the specific fields that we wanted. This data is in a written many years ago, well before Basis had a data dictionary. So it's not necessarily set up in a normalized fashion. When we run the report, we get a very modern, professional looking report. We have the icon for the add-on company. In this case, we can double click on that icon and actually launch the underlying URL. You'll also notice that the monthly sales column, the cursor changed its shape when we rolled over that, so we also have an ability to drill down there. So clicking on the add-on icon launched the addonsoftware.com website. And similarly, if we come down to the monthly sales value for Everett Industries, our first of our customers on this report, if we click on that, we launch a subsidiary report, also written in iReport, that'll show the various invoices specific to Everett Industries for this period under selection. And if we select the invoice number, we'll once again drill down to a further Jasper report that shows the actual invoice number, the line items related to that invoice, and the total including discounts, tax, and freight information. So those are all pretty neat reports, very professional looking reports. But how do we do it? What is the magic underneath those professional WYSIWYG type reports? Well, there are two things we're going to show you today. One is the actual store procedure design, and there's a new wizard that we've added in the Enterprise Manager to facilitate that. And then secondly, we also move on and show you iReports in action. You can download iReport from that URL shown in this window. So let's move along, close out this demonstration, and go back to our main menu and select our development tools. And let's launch the Basis IDE. From within the Basis IDE, we're going to be able to have access to our Enterprise Manager. First thing I want to do though is let's get rid of this launch doc. One of the options you have on the launch doc is to right click on the surrounding menu, change the dock settings. Now I want to take this out from always being on top. So let's see our IDE show through first. And we'll select the tools. And then from within tools, we'll select the BBJ Enterprise Manager. Now we need to connect to BBJ services. By default, we ship the product with admin as the username and admin123 as the default password. So having selected that, we connect to the BBJ services. And now we have access to a host of information, including information on running processes. But the one that we're interested in is the databases. And we have defined an add-on demo database. So whilst I said early on that we don't really need to access any table definitions, we do have to have at least a demo database defined wherein the store procedure can reside. So let's go across to Procedures tab, select that, and we'll see an example here of the call cust_mast store procedure. So what it's really doing is just calling some code, and this code is business basic code. So to give you an example of how that would operate, let's create a new stored procedure and show you how we would set this up. This will also illustrate for us the new capabilities of the wizard that we've added to create the skeletal template. So we click on the icon to add a new stored procedure. And by default, we'll just call it new new underscore proc 1. We'll give it a description of add-on demo sales report, and we could select a config.bbx, and that'll be useful in BBJ 9 when you can do better debugging with stored procedures. So we've set that it has a result set, and that means that it gives us a result set much like you would expect from a select statement, and we're going to pass it several parameters. The structure of the add-on demo database is that it has support for multiple companies, and we refer to that as the firm ID. So we want to select just one particular firm from the existing database. It's a parameter that we're passing in to the stored procedure. So as I said, much like a call enter statement, we're going to pass 3 parameters. We have the firm ID, and then we'll add the month. So we'll select just 1 month's worth of data that we're going to view. Once again, that's a parameter that's passed into the stored procedure. And then lastly, we need to give it a particular year. So we want to pass through the data and select just 1 year's worth of data and 1 month within that year. So that'll be our 3rd parameter. So we save that, and so we've successfully saved that stored procedure. Let's have a look now at the functionality that is offered, the new functionality that is offered within the Enterprise Manager to create a stored procedure template. With the reloaded stored procedure, we have this option down below on the left, the Build Source Template button. If we click on that, we get a warning telling us that our stored procedure source code is going to be overwritten with templated code. We'll accept that and allow it to create a skeletal code structure for us. Embedded in that skeletal code structure would be the string template of the result set, i.e. if we were just doing a select star from customer, then it would give us the IO list or string template of customer, and that's what's going to be returned by our stored procedure. So having done that, let's go across to the IDE wherein we can edit the code in our stored procedure. So the first thing I'm going to do is go and mount a new file system, and I'm going to load the add-on demo directory, which is contained under the demos, and I'm going to select the BBDict, the data dictionary, and that is where the stored procedure is stored by default under program files, basis demos, and in this particular dictionary table. So the one that we want to look at is cust_mast. Cust_mast was used to create our great looking report. But let's look at the skeletal structure that's generated by default. So you'll see at the outset it declares certain objects, the stored procedure data object. It also passes our parameters in here, the firm ID, the month, and the year. And then we've edited or remmed out this code wherein we can place our string template. By default, it just shows us some source code where we could open a channel, read through that channel based upon certain selection criteria, and then output the data that we want. So we'd use our parameters to determine those selection criteria and then populate a result set. So let's have a look at the real one. So much like that original skeletal structure, the real source code is called cust_mast. If we double click on that and bring it into our editor in the IDE, we'll see the structure of this program is pretty familiar, even to those of us that are new to the BBJ object notation. One of the new structures is a hash map that we're going to utilize. Think of a hash map as a very simple mkey type data file where we have keyed pairs. We have a key and then a value. In this case, we're going to store in it the customer number and the invoiced total value. What we're going to have to do is sequentially read through the ART-11 data file. That's our transaction data file in the add-on database. And we're going to read through that, and we'll use key equals firm IDs, set it to the very first record that matches firm ID of 01. We're obviously going to get an error because that's a partial key. And then we'll put it into a while loop with a break at the end, reading through the database as soon as we reach firm ID that's not current will break out as well. But here we populate the hash table with the invoice values. And then let's look at the rest of the store procedure. Allows us to go in and pick up on the customer master file. And so here we have the customer address, line 1, line 2, and we're concatenating that information and then populating our result set with the resultant data. And here we could be doing further manipulation to this data, perhaps unpacking a packed date field and implementing it in a SQL type syntax, perhaps concatenating a date and time field could be an example in a transaction file. And at the end we close the channel and we return the result set. So now that that is done, let's go back to the Enterprise Manager and test the results of our store procedure. We'll go back to that SQL code, the call to the store procedure with its parameters. And let's go and do a cut and paste from this SQL code and move it into the SQL tab, and we can execute any SQL that we'd like. So here we'll paste it into the SQL statement, and of course we need to replace these placeholder parameters with some constant values. We'll use firm01, and let's look at month 12, so December, and for the year 2007, and execute the store procedure code. And there it is. It's returned 13 rows, so 13 customers that have invoices for the month of December 2007. It took 171 milliseconds to execute that business basic code. Now that we have a result set available that we can pass on to a report writer, let's fire up iReport and let's go and do some definitions. So firstly we need to add driver. So we'll right click on driver, add new driver, and let's add the existing BBJ JDBC driver. So we're going to find that under my computer. If we've installed in the standard default directory, it's going to be on drive C in the program files directory under basis, and we'll find it in the lib directory, and there we find the BBJ JDBC.jar file. So we'll open that jar file. We need to find the driver class, so we'll click on the find button. It automatically finds it, and we need to give it a name, so we'll use the BBJ JDBC driver as the name. So what we've done is we've added a new driver to iReport, and now we'll need to connect to the database. So we'll establish a new connection. Firstly, the name would be BBJ JDBC driver, the one we've just created, and we need to create the database URL. And if you're like me, you can never remember the database URL, but help is at hand. If we go back into the Enterprise Manager and look at the add-on demo data directory, we'll have a button there that says how to connect, and so there are connection instructions provided. And so let's just go and cut and paste this string. We don't want to pass on the user name and password. We'll provide that at design time. So we'll paste that into the database URL, and then our username will be admin123 again. Click OK, and it connects to the database. The little icon will show that we have a connection to our database. So what's next? Well, we're going to take a shortcut, take advantage of the wizard. Let's have a very quick generation of a report from this result set. So we'll start using the report wizard. Let's just give it a default name. We'll call it WYSIWYG. Click on the next button, select our data source, we'll create a new one, and we'll use the NetBeans database JDBC connection to connect to our basis database. And we'll test our connection, and that's successful. And save it. Well, we better give it a name first. So we'll call it the add-on demo data as a name, save that, and we need to give it an SQL query, and in our case again we're going to use that call statement. So let's go and cut and paste that call code from the SQL code from the stored procedure. And naturally we need to replace those parameters with constant values just to do our little test. Later on, when we come to run this within a BBJ program, we'll be able to pass those parameters as an argument to the call to the SQL statement. But for now, we'll replace firm ID with 01, month year again with 12, and year with 2007. And we click on the next button, and there are our fields. And we can move them all across into our report. And the one or two fields we don't want, firm ID, we don't really need. And let's actually take zip code out just for ease of presentation. We're not going to do any grouping, and we'll select a tabular layout. There it is. We've finished the report. Just a few easy steps, and now we can preview that report in iReports. So we'll click on the preview button, tab rather, and there it is. We have a simple preview of those 13 customers presented in a report layout. We can now proceed to fine-tune this report, change the title, maybe format some of the columns. So with just a few steps, we've gone from data that may have been non-normalized, no data dictionary, no string templates even available to our data file, and we've exposed that to the iReport WYSIWYG report designer and created a report. Our next step will be to take this report and make it look like the one we have in the demo. So we'll begin with a fresh report. A couple of things we want to get rid of is the page header band and the column footer band. We don't really need those bands. So our first starting point is to create a report name. We'll give this report the name add-on_invoice. And let's begin by setting some parameters. We'll add some parameters, first one being the firm ID. And we'll set the default value as 01. We won't use a prompt, and we'll also add the other two, month and year. Having added those, let's move on and get our fields. So we'll do the call to the cust_mast, and we prompt it for the various fields. So we read those fields, passing the parameters firm ID, month and year. Now we'll put some static text up in our title. So we'll give our report a title. We're going to use the old add plus on name. Seems most appropriate for this circa 1980, 1970 data set. Add-on manufacturing company. We can expand that out to fill the width of our report page. Make it a bit deeper. Let's change the font. We'll select Lucida Sans, and our point size we'll make nice and large, 24 point. I see I've misspelled company. We'll go back and correct that in a minute. We'll make it bold first, and we'll center it. So pretty straightforward tools that you would be familiar with from any sort of WYSIWYG reporting tool. Now we're going to create an image. We're going to go and get that add-on image. It currently resides in the program files, basis directory, demos, and then underneath demos it's in the reports directory, and it's a PNG, and it's called under images add-on.png. So we'll open that up, and it brings that image into the screen. We need to drag that across, do a bit of resizing. As we resize it, you'll see the image is redrawn to keep it in its proportional shape as the original PNG. Let's move that across to the far right hand side of our title. And while we're here, let's go back and correct that spelling of company. Now that we have the icon on the right hand side, it probably would be appropriate for us to add our linkage, so the underlying URL that'll link anybody clicking on the icon, link them to the add-on software web page. So let's add the hyperlink. And it's going to be a reference, hyperlink type of reference, and let's give it the expression, and this will be the http://www.addonsoftware.com. We need to put that in quotation marks. Now we're done. So now we have the first line of our title. And let's add a second line, a second text field. We want to tell it for which period this report is valid. And so I've got a string that I've copied in here. That'll bring us sales for, and then depending upon the value of those parameters we've passed in, it's going to extrapolate the month into a description for that particular month. Once again, changing the font and the point size, making it bold, and centering the text. And that's pretty much all we need for our heading. We can preview that to see what it looks like. Let's make it a bit wider so we can see the icon on the right hand side. And that looks pretty good. We've got our title. Let's probably make that fill up the band as well. So there it is, 2 lines on our title band. The next task we have is to add the column headers for our columnar report. So we'll add static text for each of them. That's pretty nice WYSIWYG drag and drop and snap to grid type capability. So let's resize them a bit. We know the customer number is going to be fairly small. Customer name, on the other hand, is going to be quite a bit larger. And then address is going to be significantly larger. So let's put that text in, customer number, customer name, address, and then the sales total, so the monthly sales. Now the last thing we can do is monthly sales is for all these titles is to set a font, so we can select all of them and set the fonts all at once and the point size at one time and make them bold. What I'd like to do is show these titles in a sort of reverse video, so white on black. So let's change the color, the foreground color and the background color. And we'll make that opaque. So now our title looks pretty neat. The last thing I want to do is right justify this monthly sales title. After all, we want our numerical value to be right justified, so it makes sense for us to right justify the sales value as well. So we'll align our title band to match, and let's do a preview. If it doesn't fit, we can also just change the percentage that shows up on our preview pane. Let's go back to the designer. Our next step is to get the fields. So we want customer number to begin with. So we drag and drop that to the detail band, resize it, add the customer name, let's put in address line 1, and rather than trying to line up address line 1 and 2, we'll come back later and append, concatenate address line 1 to address line 2. Let's put the invoice total in place. And we'll go and change the fonts. We want to right justify the monthly sales value. And we want to take that a bit further. It's a numeric. So we can go down and add a pattern for that numeric to match. So put the dollar, the leading dollar, hash, comma, hash, hash, 0.00. I mentioned that we want to concatenate those two string values, the add address line 1 and address line 2. So we simply add those two strings and display them as one field. We'll resize the detail band, and now we need to add the link to our sub-report. So we need to specify the type as a remote anchor, and we need to add a parameter, because we're going to pass a parameter to our sub-report. The report name, so we'll select the report that we've previously created using iReport Designer. And we escape out the backslashes. And now we need to pass it to it also the customer name, and that'll be the field value of customer name. The firm ID, and the customer number. And of course the parameters of month and year. And that'll invoke a sub-report passing those parameters, much in the same way our initial call to the store procedure passed the firm ID, year and month. Now we want to go and put some information into our footer. So we'll use some default field values. We'll use the date, and let's also add some text fields. page number. And we can select one of the variables that's automatically generated by iReport, being the page number. It uses the notation $V for variable, and select page number X of, and then the total page numbers. And then lastly, we want to go and put some information into our summary band. Let's just align this page footer first and align the band. Right justify that. Select the font and the point size, and adjust the band to fit. And we'll do a preview. Scroll down to see the totals at the bottom, so a date and time and page numbering as well. So lastly, let's put some summary totals. Firstly, static text to give us the label for total monthly sales. And we'll select a variable and give it the name total sales. Select the class of variable, big decimal, the fact that it's a sum in the calculation, and specify the variable expression. So use the notation for $F for the field value, and that'll be invoice total from each line. And so we'll place this new variable total sales, and once again give it a pattern. Or a mask. We'll adjust the band to fit. Adjust the font and the point size. And let's make it bold. Make sure it's all readable. And of course, right justify the totals. Let's preview that. And there it is. Our report is pretty much done. Our last remaining step is to invoke BBJ to run this report. So let's move back to the IDE and let's create a new program. And I'm going to cheat a bit here, do a little copy and paste Let's first create the program name, add-on underscore invoice. And I can do a cut and paste of the standard code I'm going to need to run this program. So it's going to invoke, firstly I'm going to pass it the report name, the connection string, the add-on sales report object needs to be invoked with the report name, fill the report with the parameter information of the data, and then finally customize the report's title and placement and show the report. This is invoking the feature and functionality of BB Jasper. So very, very trivial, very few lines of code. All I'm really having to do is invoke the connection string, the report name, and place the values in the parameters that need to be passed through. So once we do that, we can run that program. And there it is. There's my BB Jasper viewer. I can save this off as various file types. I can invoke my hyperlink to the add-on software program. And this could be saved as a PDF, as an XML file type. It could be faxed to a client, and of course it could be printed. My hyperlinks are still active to my sub-reports, showing both invoices by customer or drilling down to a particular invoice number.